Today, Homeworthy is taking you inside 3 storied New York City apartments shaped by the extraordinary creatives who live there. In the neighborhood of Sutton Place, legendary design editor Robert Ruffino opens the doors to his fabulously curated jewel box apartment, where objects collected over decades reflect his influential career at places like Henry Bendel, Tiffany & Co., and some of the most iconic interiors in New York. On Park Avenue, interior decorator, author, and former photojournalist Stephanie Stokes welcomes us into her elegant home filled with rare global treasures and artful tabletop vignettes that reflect a life defined by travel, culture, and an expert eye. And in Carnegie Hill, interior designer Susanna Maggard reveals her eclectic one-bedroom, transformed through antiques, inventive design, and bold personal expression into a space that captures her singular creative point of view. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Sometimes I think I live in the past, you know? Put me in the set of Downton Abbey or Barry Lyndon or whatever. I've photographed Prince Charles, Elizabeth Taylor, other celebrities, beautiful homes, traveled all over. But when I turn that key and come back home, it's my nest. It's my safe place. It's my world. I don't let a lot of people in. It's just here lately I feel so at peace that, okay, welcome to my world. This is who I am. The one wonderful part of growing up in New York, it's the city that never sleeps. When you cross First Avenue and you walk down between First down to Sutton Place, it becomes a whole different world. And as you go down the avenue, there's some beautiful big buildings, and then there are rows of beautiful townhouses. It's very old world that's been preserved. It's extremely private. There's wonderful little parks where children can play or people can go read a book. There's beautiful walks you could take along the river. And it's very magical and it's very private.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, Homeworthy. Welcome to my apartment, my cabinet of curiosities. I'm Robert Ruffino. Welcome to my home in New York City. I started my career at Henry Bendel. Then for a short period, I became a fashion editor. After that, I did go to Tiffany & Company. And then I fell into the world of interiors, working for several different magazines. I was born and raised on the outskirts of Chinatown, Little Italy. Obviously, I'm Italian. I went to missionary school in Chinatown, where way back when, it was really like a little village. It wasn't as big as it is now. I remember going to school 7:30 in the morning. They would be scrubbing the sidewalks. And it was a charming way of growing up, you know. And then you had Little Italy on the other side of Canal Street, where, you know, there were beautiful push carts of vegetables and meats and the wonderful cheese shops. It was a different world. My father was a taxi driver. My mother ran a card shop. After grammar school, I went to the High School of Fashion Industries, where FIT started, and I wanted to become a fashion designer. And you had to learn how to sew and do pattern making, which I did, and I just said, this is not for me. And the counselor said, you should try like window display and merchandising and store design, which I did. And I felt very comfortable. I was a really good student. I went to FIT for a little bit after that. And then a few years passed. Someone said, there is a job opening at a store called Henry Bendel. And I went, okay. And I went, I looked at Henry Bendel, I went, holy God, wow. This is a dream world. And I had an interview for 3 hours with a gentleman by the name of Robert Curry. A week later, I started, a full-time job there. In the 70s, the windows were called street theater. And Robert Curry was the genius of the world of windows. I worked at Bendel's for 11 years, and I was in charge of, the street of shops, merchandising, store design. I was involved in everything and anything. It was a small family, and you didn't have to be filthy rich. It was about people who had style and people who knew how to put it together. Bendel's is where designers really got their start and where I started my career. So I stayed at Bendel's for 11 years. I was the accessory editor for Elle Fashion for about a year and a half. And then I left and I went to GQ for a short period. While I was at Elle Decor, I met Carol Vogel from the New York Times, and I started doing some freelance shoots on home design. So I started doing interiors. I went to Harper's Bazaar for about 3 years, and then I just started freelancing, doing this, doing that, did some advertising for Estee Lauder, and one day someone said, there's a job opening at Tiffany's. They want to speak to you. So I said, okay. So I went, and I said, you know what? I said, I'm really not interested in just designing windows. I would be bored. And they looked at me and said, well, what do you want? So I said, well, here's what I want. There's no consistency in any of your stores. The case line doesn't look great. And I am a person who likes to be involved in a lot of different things. So I created the monster. I became vice president of creative services worldwide. But I worked with public relations on all their special events, table settings that we were known for. I got involved in store design. I got involved in some product, archival exhibitions. I just love, I'm like an octopus. I like to be involved in everything and shake it up. And that lasted for 13 years. So welcome to my world. We're on 57th Street, off of Sutton Place. And this is my world. This is my apartment, surrounded by things that I have collected or have had made, things I love. When I first moved in, I needed to have a sofa made. And I've always loved armless sofas. I love down. And it's covered in this beautiful velvet that looks worn. It's by Oscar de la Renta. I've had it, for 15 years. I lived here about 16 years. This wonderful coffee table that I got when I had my first other apartment, it's Ralph Lauren. It could go anywhere. I just love it. Can't live without anything Elsa Peretti. Her beautiful bone candlesticks. This wonderful thing I found at an antique show at the Armory. I think I bought 2 or 3 of them, and one of them I gave to a friend. I love tulips, and anything in this apartment has to be white. I'm obsessed with white flowers. When I was 50, I was in London, of course, one of my favorite places, and we stumbled beautiful gallery. These are like diamonds are a girl's best friend. These snakes are my best friend because they cost a fortune. They're from 17 something, but they are so magnificent. I find them to be sexy. Snakes, yeah, I love them. They're great. The chairs, I'm not quite sure where I got them. It was a long time ago, but I love the leather, the backs, like the ottoman, they're like in a morning stripe, that if like from a men's pant, a morning stripe pant. One of my favorite things here, my dear friend Bill Abronowitz, he gave me this photograph years ago. It's of water. It was this small. And one day I said, Bill, could you make that bigger for me? And he printed it on aluminum, and I had it framed. And I just, it just goes in my world. My world is very black and white and a hit of color. That's one of my favorite things. I love plaster objects. I don't know why. I don't have a foot fetish, but I find these very sexy. That all of these plaster feet are made in Rome or somewhere in Europe. I got them at John Darien. For those of you who remember Zona from the late 70s, early 80s from Soho, I love coral. When I had a house in Bridgehampton, I had 2 huge cabinets of coral. Some of it I sold, some of it I still have. My wonderful desk are from Tiffany. They were once used in the Schlumberger department, and I had the great opportunity to buy them. And I put the marble tops on them. These are not made anymore. These are Elsa Peretti orchid pots. Little crystal sometimes brings good luck. You never know. The power of a crystal. In here, and in my bedroom, you'll see my Giacometti lamps. This vintage mirror, I found this mirror, this frame in an antique shop. And then I sanded it down and gave it a really older finish, and then I put the antique mirror in. And one day I just started, I don't know, putting postcards on it. Not a big deal. I have no idea what this means, but I just like the mystery of it. I think this is part of my Elsa Peretti influence, where she liked skull heads and rocks and bones and nature. I think that's where that comes from, that mind. They can't be, the leaves can't be too overwhelming. So when I went down to the market the other day, I didn't want, sometimes they're a little bit bigger, but this felt very contained. And I think bringing flowers, or especially branches, into an apartment, it gives it another life, another layer. You know, it brings the inside to the outside, and just something very happy, some green. The first week I got to Tiffany's, you know, Gene Moore, who worked there till his late 80s, his assistant said, "Oh, behind your desk are all the books with Mr. Moore's windows." I said, "Great." I said, "Would you call facilities and let's get boxes? We're going to pack all these books up." And the fellow's name was John. He said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "I grew up in New York. I know what Gene Moore did, but it's time to turn the page." So my approach for doing the windows at Tiffany's, because I love the idea of creating still lifes, I look through a camera, creating the most beautiful still life for a magazine page. And that's how I approach my windows. And the windows were basically, you know, whether they were buying props, or I, you know, had someone make Marie Antoinette wigs out of cellophane. Some of, you know, I sometimes put in paintings, but it was totally put together with my hands. It's like a canvas. I knew what I was going to do, but I didn't know what I was going to do until I got there, and we put the still life together. But the other marvelous thing about Tiffany's, I grew up in the 70s. I grew up at Studio 54, Halston, Elsa Peretti. I met Elsa Peretti. And we had an amazing relationship. You know, I remember I was at Tiffany's for a few months, and it was Elsa's 25th anniversary. And they go, "Oh, you know, Elsa Peretti's coming." And I had cuffs of Peretti, belt. I was a big fan of Elsa's. I said, "You know, Elsa's coming. The whole store has to be done for Elsa, and the windows, and she's very particular. And it's your project. We're taking over the Four Seasons, and you have to design the environment." Okay. And in came this woman, and she said to management, she said, "What took you so long to find this guy?" And Elsa used to call me Ruffy. And I will say this, and not bragging, I don't know what happened. She never once asked me to change anything. This chair was one of the purchases. I at a young age, I bought at Sotheby's. I have no idea why I bought it, but it just works. Now, the daybed is from Paris. I bought this years ago at a place called Howard Kaplan. I don't know if it's there anymore. It took 3 daybeds to get into this, not this apartment, but my previous apartment. This one, fortunately, comes apart. The 2 others did not. They had to go back. And I basically have slept in this bed for many, many years, especially when I lived on 73rd Street for 14 years. You know, along the way, I found this at an antique fair in Rhinebeck. This is a signed piece by Hero that he did for Elsa. It's numbered, you know, her famous bone cuff. I don't like a lot of stuff on the walls. I don't like to clutter up the walls. I think the snakes have a big presence. Taking a grease pencil and blocking out ugly buildings across the street, and at night it looks fantastic. Edward Luke Hall, this was a gift from him. I love a bust. I remember being in London before he was ever, he had a small boutique, and like I was obsessed. Again, plaster, feet, hands. You know, I once photographed for AD Elizabeth Taylor's house. This is not a Warhol. It's a woman who, she's a little bit quirky, and I don't know. That shoot stood by my heart, and when we shot her, the second day she was in the hospital. During the night she died, and we went back to photograph her house. There's just something about it that brings memories. You know, I grew up watching Elizabeth Taylor movies. One of my favorite things you talk about, I find beauty in this. I have no idea. I got this in San Miguel at a fair, but I bought this years ago at Old Westbury Garden at an auction, a black tie dinner. This is Alberto Gili. There's just something so sexy, and I love black and white. I love these dark flowers. And again, our friendly snake. These are the first chairs I ever bought at Sotheby's. I was in my early 20s. Of course, they were falling apart. It had green silk fabric. I was with a dear friend who was much older than I was. She said, "Robert, you're young. This is a good investment." And I love these chairs. These I got at Creo and Gal when they opened a Millbrook. They remind me of Saint Laurent jewelry. I have no idea. I love the jewels. I love lighting them up at night. You know, my collection of books. I got this years ago at Meacock's Garden. There were 2 of them. They didn't want to break up the set. Fortunately, they did. And I just, you know, I'm a big collector of books. Again, coral, antlers that I painted white, of course. Hunslodem. This I got in the Paris flea market. This I got in Millbrook at an antique shop. Painting by a friend. Though this hand was a gift from my art teacher when I graduated the High School of Fashion Industry. So I've had this for a long time. I've had this about 50 years. It means something to me. You know, everything here means a little something to me. It's come from somewhere, you know. I was working at AD. We went to Scotland to shoot this castle called Demphrey House. So this house was up for sale. The son didn't want it. Everything was tagged, going to Christie's for auction. Prince Charles came along, stop. He found 14 donors. They saved the house. They restored the house. And it was my assignment to go photograph the house. I worked with the legendary Derry Moore. And so when I got there, I had a meeting in the afternoon, and John, who was Prince Charles's, at the time he was Prince Charles's personal assistant, He said, well, you know, you're only allowed to photograph 5 rooms. And I went, why? He said, well, that's our policy. I went, I came here all this way. So I looked around, they showed me everything. And the next day he said, you know, we'd like you to come in for a meeting with his personal secretary. She's going to be here tomorrow. So she and I met. She was lovely. And she said, oh, Mr. Ruffino, you're so kind. We're going to let you do whatever you want. And, you know, I'm going to introduce you to the local florist. Cut anything you want. He'll arrange it. You can do it yourself. And by the way, Prince Charles is coming tonight. And tomorrow night, he's going to have a dinner in the dining room after you set it, and we'll help you set it, for 14 of his donors. And if you'd like to photograph him, he's going to be in a kilt, unfortunately. I went, oh, I said, well, I love kilts. And he said, but you only have 10 minutes. I had to sign all these papers. We arrive that evening. He comes down, and they said, do not curtsy, don't do anything. And, oh, Mr. Ruffino, how nice to meet you. He said, I understand you may put me on the cover. So I said, well, you never know, sir. And the 10 minutes, we had almost an hour with him. He was completely charming. He was a great sport. And, you know, I could not say a word to anyone. But when this happened, I called Margaret Russell. She said, everything all right? I said, oh, yeah. I said, and you know, we're going to photograph the whole house. They've been so kind. And by the way, I'm photographing Prince Charles tomorrow night. She said, really, Robert? I went, really? I mean, that was a pinch, you know? So I was like, wow. I mean, he was lovely. And of course, he made the cover. It was a beautiful cover in his kilt. These urns or planters, whatever you want to call them, these come from Chinatown, okay? They're brown, they're glazed, and when I worked at Bendel's, we used these as planters. And I went down to Chinatown and I bought some and gessoed them white, and it's a great place for your magazines. Every apartment I've had since my first, I've always had zebra skins. I love a zebra skin rug. A little animal print goes a long way, as you could see there. And you know, this is basically my world. You know, I love to entertain here, to have people over for drinks. So, you know, we may have hors d'oeuvres, or sometimes it's, you know, I'll have food in the kitchen and it's a buffet. Not many people, of course.
What was it like working and living in New York City in the 1970s?
There was total individuality. There was this freedom that not everyone looked the same. Not everyone was in black. Not everyone was in Prada. Not everyone was Louis Vuitton. It wasn't about labels. It was about you, what you wanted to be, and how you wanted to express yourself. And that, I remember every Sunday, we would go to the fountain in Central Park. And, you know, people would just be decked out, and it was like a fashion show. There was this freedom. And, you know, I look at 57th Street now where, you know, there was the gazebo, there was Andre Oliver, there was a townhouse of Clarence House. Jack's was across the street from Bendel's specialty women's store. Charivari was down the block. It was a whole different time. And Madison Avenue, all the beautiful stores, and Valentino and Halston, and it was just, the energy was so different.
Do you miss it?
I missed the time, yeah. And you know, then along came Studio 54 and all the clubs. And you know, one thing about Robert Ruffino, I love to dance, and I hung out at Studio 54, and there were all these underground clubs, and it was just a very, very special time. So most people use this as a dining room. They have a banquette or a table or a little table. I call this my gallery space. This is where I sit sometimes and do my work, take some of this stuff down. Again, things that I've collected along the way. These I found at a fair. They're from the 50s. There's a history of this guy, but I These are negatives. Again, my world is black and white and gray. Hello? Believe it or not, at night, I close these. I closed out the world, and I open them in the morning. It's you know, I love a parterre, like welcome, you know, especially when I open the door and people are looking in. Obviously, the foyer is done in men's fabric, upholstered walls. All the doors in most of my apartments, the doors are always stripped down to the steel. As you can see right here, the steel frames. When I was in San Miguel, there was a local photographer. She's in some museums. And then when I was in Texas, the designer Michelle Nussbaum carries her work. And it just makes me happy. It's just a fun, I mean, you know, they're in their masks for Halloween or whatever. It's just so in me to have this. That's why I like it, you know. Again, Giacometti lamp. This gentleman's work, whose name I forget, his work is in museums. This was a gift from an artist from LA. I mean, a traditional chair, you know, but take a faux snakeskin fabric, and it gives it a newer life. It gives it a different edge. All right, so you asked me what is messy. I think the only thing that's a little bit messy is my junk drawer. Some ribbons that are just thrown in. I love wrapping gifts. I grew up in a household where at Christmas you wrapped the top of the box, you open your gift, then you put it back like the gift was never opened. Because the tree was up for 10 days, everything had to be perfect on the bottom. You know, that's my junk. And you know, I have ribbons down here. Yeah, I love wrapping gifts. So this was a cedar closet, it still is. So every closet, I have 4 closets in this apartment. They're all covered in this block print or Indian print fabric that I bought years ago from a place called Diamond, I think it was called. And it's organized and it's fun. I mean, I have tons of sweaters. I love scarves that practically all look the same. Dark colors, of course. I love this foyer. I love the lacquered ceiling. And this here, I was up in Hudson at a gallery, and this woman photographs parakeets with vintage wallpaper. It has a sense of humor. Again, it makes me happy. It's like I love having the seriousness of a men's fabric with something a little bit florally. Again, you know, everything is, this is the original steel, stripped down. I just love the way that looks. My first job was on 57th Street, right? Then I wound up working at Hearst, right? Then I worked, well, at Hearst and Tiffany. 57th Street has always been something. I don't know, it's my ground. I had a very good friend, an older woman who lived on this block, but also growing up in New York, some of my friends, their grandparents lived in this neighborhood. So I had this wonderful studio that I lived for almost 14 years on 73rd Street. And I said, okay, I lived in a studio. I've lived in studios practically all my life. And I love small spaces. And so I hired this realtor, and he said, there's some places down near Sutton Place. Okay. He showed me this apartment. This apartment just sold. I said, Stephen, why are you showing me this? He said, but an apartment's coming up, and this is the God's eye. I said, I want to see it. He said, but it's not for sale yet. I walked in that door. There was red acid all over the walls. Half the floors were up. I walked in. I went, I want this apartment. He said, it's not on the market yet. I said, I want this apartment. I got the apartment. And you know, they painted it white. They did what they did. It was a clean box. I came in, had it repainted, and did some alterations. And I just felt at home here. I had no idea. It was like, and when I slept here, the first night with my Jack Russell Windsor, who's no longer with me, it was like we had the best night's sleep. It was funny. All right, so here we are in my bedroom. So when I first got this apartment, the one thing I did not like, that you had to go into the bedroom to go to the bathroom. So we have this bed, yes, but I wanted to create a men's den, almost like a little bit of a library. And I love this blue wall, these walls. It's Farrell and Ball. I unfortunately forgot the color, but it reminds me of Brooks Brothers blue and white pajamas, or a blue and white striped shirts I used to wear. I'm obsessed with spy prints, and I love, I live by my books. I love my books. Along the way I found this in an antique shop. It kind of reminds me of me, believe it or not. This photograph is a mannequin, Renata. It's when I worked at Bendel's, where I did all my makeup. These chests, these two, they sit on top of one another. I got these in the early 80s from John Roselli when he had a small shop on 72nd Street. So they've been with me all my life, and they're just part of who I am. These chairs I got, Lord & Taylor years ago had the best furniture department. They were a set of 8. I think I was 19 or 20, and it was with my mom. I said, I want those chairs. She said, well, we can't buy 8. And they broke up the set. And I sat in these when I've been in many apartments, and I just couldn't part with them. So they're very proud. They're very sexy. Now they hold my books. It's something I can't part with. My wonderful cameo by Doug Meyer, a gift. Okay, so the bed, the headboard and the screens it could be a men's jacket fabric, it reminds me of menswear. And I like mixing things up, This is an antique, this is from Peter Dunham, this is a vintage pillow, this is a vintage bedspread. So I just like, it's a little bit bohemian. Bohemian meets the gentleman in his library. You have to have fun with it, I love layering things and mixing things up. That's a photograph of one of my windows at Tiffany's that became an ad. And I met this young lady who worked with saran wrap, and I said, I want you to make me wigs that look like Marie Antoinette. And it was very successful. Always a little bit more of Elsa Peretti, of course. These are Giacometti lamps. At a young age, I was very fortunate I didn't even know what I was buying and how I got them, but that's the secret, so we can't tell that secret. Christopher Spitzmiller lamp, more books, more magazines. I love collecting the world of interiors. There's ADs, stacks of books, some photographs and art that I've found or given to me. One of my favorite things in this room is this Italian putti that I bought at Sotheby's, and I had to have it. And of course, it was on the phone, the bid kept going higher and higher and higher. And he's just so beautiful. The face, and he gets polished and waxed, and it just makes me happy, It's very spiritual. I love going to church to meditate. I love the smell of incense. I was once an altar boy. It just brings back memories of my childhood. These little tables I've had since the 70s, and some I've had remade, if you could find someone to remake them. And again, I have books and books and more books. All the books in the lobby are mine on loan. And I have books in the country, I have a little house that I share with a friend up in Rhinebeck. I have tons of books there. And through the years you edit out or you give them away, or you donate them. But some books, you know, the other day someone was talking about Derry Moore. And I went, oh my God, yeah, I remember that. And there it was. I hate TVs, especially when you go in these beautiful bedrooms and they have this ginormous TV on the wall. Like, what do you do to it? So, you know, sometimes we put a painting over it, or we make the TV go on. I can't deal with it. I had 2 Jack Russells. This is Arnold. When I worked at Tiffany's, there was a wonderful woman. She loved to draw, and she did this little painting for me as a gift. So that was Arnold. I had him for a number of years. Unfortunately, he ran away. That broke my heart. I'll never forget that. This was my last Jack. The love of my life, Windsor, of course, you know, the Duke of Windsor, or, you know, just Windsor, Windsor. He was all white, very long legs, and he was a sweetheart, you know. It's true, dogs are man's best friend. So are cats, I guess. I'm not a cat person, but I have friends who have cats, and that's okay. My favorite place in the world is London. I just feel very at home in London. It's, well, you know, I love an English accent, but there's just something about the ambiance, the people, and of course when I say that when I go to London, people say, oh, but you know, if you lived here, you would hate it. Well, I have a love-hate for New York. I grew up here. So to me, London is intriguing. Just the beautiful streets. I mean, growing up in New York, there were all the streets were cobblestone. I was just downtown last night on Bond Street, the restaurant, and the streets are still cobblestone. You know, it just feels so, or into beautiful places down in the village, West 4th Street, that you feel old world. And, you know, I love the way an Englishman dresses. I love tailoring. I love clothing. You know, I've been on the international dress list twice. I laugh because I don't know.
You've just got style.
So they tell me, but I don't think about it, you know? It's like when I worked at Tiffany's for 13 years, you know, I bought a lot of things from Ralph Lauren, a lot of Purple Label. Some things were made, some clothes came from London. I wore a beautiful tie, my Windsor knot, my Miche cufflinks every day. You know, there's a funny joke. I have an obsession for shoes. So when Tom Ford went to Gucci, he brought out made-to-measure shoes, but they were from the archives. And I bought 4 black and 4 brown, but that was in 1996 or so. And so I'm always, you know, I've had someone copy them, but, you know, when I see something, I identify. It makes me comfortable. It's like, you know, I have many pinstripe suits, whether they're small, they're big, it's double-breasted, it's a uniform. I'm not trendy. And when I said that to someone, says, you're not trendy? I know, just because I wrap a polka dot scarf around my neck, it gives it an edge, it gives it a twist, it has a sense of humor. As they say, this is a work of art, okay? So I'm a little anal, and I'm a little anal. And, you know, everything is where it needs to be. I know where it is. And I love to be organized. I love my stuff, you know, I mean, you know, here are some watches. I have watches over there. Here's some, you know, little knot cufflinks. I have wallets in here. I have, you know, extra shave cream, cotton, you name it. It's all storage, you know, stationery, checkbooks, tons of shirts, little office accessories, nonsense I hang here. Well, right now there are a lot of white shirts. So, you know, we start with like corduroy shirts, denim, then, you know, you have tuxedo shirts. These are like all white. Some are casual, some are dress, some are jackets, ties when I wear them, some casual shoes over there. Can't get enough tassels. I mean, that's crazy. That's nuts. And most of these tassels are, you know, some are from Paris, from the flea market. These I love. I love this color. It's so They remind me of church. I know why that comes to my mind. These are the Gucci shoes that Tom Ford did not design them. He went to the archives and they were made to measure. So I have one pair of brown left and one pair of black that I have never worn. And I've been wearing these since 98, 99, and here we are today. And and then I find along the way, I find shoes that kind of look like it, and no matter where, if I wear the original ones, people go, "Oh my God, I love your shoes." You can never have enough shoes, but they all look alike, and that's fine with me. I mean, as time goes on, I limited how much I need and what I need. A lot of pinstripes. Some of my jackets are out being pulled in because I've lost some weight, and I'd like to feel fitted and slick. And it's all about tailoring. It's like you could buy something inexpensive, but if it's well tailored, it looks good. This is the real thing. So, when my dear friend Philip Smith was 50, we were supposed to go to Scotland, and then it changed. His mom was ill. Anyway, so he is Scottish, and he always wanted a kilt. So we were in London, and we went to a few places, and the kilts, they were like costumes. They were for Halloween. So we went to my hotel, and the guy said, "There's a man who makes kilts. This is his number. He's a little odd." So I call, his name was John, or forget whatever his name was. Anyway, so, "Well, come to my place." So we got in a car, and I was a little bit freaked out. It was kind of a funny neighborhood. I said, "Philip, you sit here. I'll go down the alleyway." We opened the door, big, heavy-set gentleman. The room must have been a little bit bigger than this. There were 6 sewers and all these garments hanging. And so he took out the book, and he made clothing for Prince Charles and other higher up. The weight of this is crazy. So this is a black watch. Philip's last name is Smith. His kilt is a Robinson, because that's what Smiths wear, a Robinson. And I just I wish I was a little bit taller, but most Christmas Eves, if I go up to Rhinebeck, we wear our kilts as a tradition. He wears the vest, the tie, the sporum. I don't wear all of that stuff, but it's. Look at the pleating. This is all custom done. It's beautiful. That's my kilt story. You could borrow it anytime. I was always influenced by a gentleman, 2 of them, Givenchy and Bill Blass. And Bill Blass lived at 1 Sutton Place. I don't have his antiques, I don't have his money, but I call this my gentleman's salon. And I'm surrounded by things I have had for years that mean something to me. It's not about trends, it's not about a certain style, it's just about who I am. It works for me. It may not work for everyone. Sometimes I'll take certain things back out and put them again. It doesn't work. It's disturbing. And I hate to say the word being very strict. I've photographed Prince Charles, Elizabeth Taylor, other celebrities, beautiful homes, beautiful apartments, traveled all over, Armani, for instance, just many beautiful places, worked with many wonderful decorators. There's something about, would I like 2 more rooms? Why not? But when I turn that key and come back home, it's my nest. It's my safe place. It's my world. When we did our windows, every week it was about creating a different scene, whether it was something dramatic or something funny. You know, beautiful mannequins in Mary McFadden, and one was lying in the snow because she drank the poison from the bottle. So it was always something, whether they were funny, whether they were romantic. And the thing about, also, every week, the mannequins had real makeup. That I should have become a makeup artist, I would have been very rich today. So we were just totally hands-on. And, you know, once Geraldine trusted you, the door was open. Welcome to my black Venetian plaster lacquered kitchen. So when I first moved in here, all the cabinets were white, and I had the walls painted gray Venetian stucco. And as time went on, I was never really happy with it. So I decided, okay, I want everything black. I've always wanted a black kitchen a la Halston. I don't know why Halston comes to my mind, but it felt very Halston. Anyway, when I first moved in, the stainless steel black splash I did put in the sink. So we got new doors. We covered the refrigerator and freezer with black Formica. What's in my refrigerator? A lot of sparkling water, always yogurt, coffee, more sparkling water, some champagne and wine, and you know, rice cakes. I make celery juice every morning. Dog biscuits for the dogs in the building. Not much. I mean, you know, I have my blueberries in the morning with my yogurt. I have cottage cheese. Every night, you know, I have smoked salmon that I'm going to have tomorrow night. These are zinc planters. They're the real thing. That when I had a house in Bridgehampton, they were in front of my entranceway with boxwood. It's a great place for storage. Obviously, I'm not a great cook, so I love making salads with mushrooms and tomatoes, and I'll steam broccoli and make grilled chicken sometime, you know, keep it simple. But, you know, favorite thing, these are Vendu Truex, who was once the great designer of Tiffany and Company. He made these beautiful decanters. I believe this size is out of production. And I think Baccarat still sells this. I know Tiffany doesn't sell it anymore, and they're hard to come by. The simplicity of this design and this little detail of it's so beautiful. You know, some people use these in their bathroom for mouthwash. Every now and then I use it for wine. Of course, always black pencils and black markers. So, you know, sometimes I make a little buffet if I'm having people, and, you know, as I said, I don't cook much. I have people over for drinks or soft hors d'oeuvres, or maybe 2 or 3 people if we sit down around the sofa, or sometimes I pull out one of the desks and set a table. But, you know, it's not for everyone. If you really cooked, I don't think it's very practical, but I'm not a practical person, and I'm happy to say I'm not. After Tiffany's, I was very friendly with Stephen Drucker, who was the editor-in-chief of House Beautiful, who brought House Beautiful back. And one day he said, I will hire you on a freelance basis. I will give you a desk, I will give you a business card, I will give you a charge card, I'll give you a monthly fee, any shoot you do or anything you bring in. And I worked for Stephen for 3 years. And then I knew Margaret for a long, long time. And she called me, she said, I'd love for you to come and talk to me to be the interior design editor for Architectural Digest. And we had a great meeting. And I said, look, I said, Stephen's at Town and Country. He and I had spoken that he may hire me. And I was very upfront. So I said, I owe him the courtesy. So I went to Stephen's office And I said, he said, well, there's a rumor you're going to AD. I went, rumor or not, it doesn't matter. I said, are you going to hire me? And he looked at me, he said, I think you would be much happier at AD. And then I went back to Hearst and I worked for Michael Boudreau at El Decor, which was wonderful. And I think 5 years down, things had changed. They brought in a new editor and it wasn't the right fit for me, let's put it that way. And I was going to leave and they said, well, you know, we're bringing in a new editor for House Beautiful. Maybe you could help her. And so I met Jo Saltz and she said, you're extremely overqualified. She says, I'm so intimidated by you. I said, okay, let's stop that. Yes, I know I intimidate people. I can't change the way I look. I said, I'm actually a teddy bear and very funny, but I do have my standards. I said, for me, it'd be a challenge to help you. And so I did that for a while, then the pandemic happened and and I worked for Jo for about maybe 4 years. And then I just left. I said, you know, I for the last 3 years, I've worked for myself. You know, I contribute to Frederick. I do some stories for El Decor. I did a story for Town and Country. I do stuff for Veranda. I'm not on any masthead except Frederick. And basically, I work for designers. I do some consulting for Dugournet. I just did this huge project for Urban Electric. And, you know, I don't know what's next. I feel like instead of going, I'm going backwards. Like Marion says, you look so young and happy. It's like a rebirth, you know? It's like you have to go with the change, you have to go with the time. And I just feel so at peace with myself. And one thing I love to do is to give back and talk to young designers and help them. And you have to give back to people because I feel I've had this long journey. Allison, to tell you the truth, I don't know who Robert Ruffino is. Like, my head should be this big. People are you Robert Ruffino? Go, no, I'm just Robert. I am. Like, I'm done, next. I don't know, I feel very blessed. Yeah, there are some things I wish I would have done differently, but I've had this career and I'm still going.
And what do you love about this apartment?
It gives me the opportunity to express who I really am. And I've said this before, I don't let many people into my life. I know a lot of people, but I'm really very private. I do go out a lot, but doesn't mean, you know. And I could be here on the weekend and maybe talk to 3 people and just be happy here and go out for walks, go to a museum. But, you know, I love being in my space.
Today we're in New York City, inside the spectacular Park Avenue apartment of interior decorator and tabletop expert Stephanie Stokes. She's also the author of The World at Your Table. A former international photojournalist, art historian, and Wall Street banker, Stephanie has lived many lives. In her timeless home, objects from distant lands and different eras come together in perfect harmony.
It doesn't matter, again, where you buy anything or where it came from. It matters if it flows together.
Stephanie's approach to design blends beauty with the practical realities of New York City living.
I think one of the main things about a room is to make it poetic. And by poetic, I mean of use for many different functions. This is a guest room, this is a bar, this is a media room, this is a library, this is a working room, and it's not that big, but it really, really is nice to be in.
From centuries-old treasures discovered in Indonesia and India to an art collection sourced right here in New York, every object in Stephanie's home carries its own story.
I'm surrounded by paintings that come from Robert Moore, an American who lived in England in the 70s and 80s. One day I rushed into Lucy Campbell's store up in Kensington Heights, Church Street, and said, Lucy, what have you got of Roger Moore? And she said, oh, I've only got a few left, but you better buy them quickly. And I said, well, why, Lucy? And she said, because he's dying. And I said, when? She said, this afternoon. And I said, okay, I'll take them all. We sent the money in a taxi to him. He got it, and he calls up and he says, thank you. I've decided to live now. I am appreciated.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hello, Homeworthy. Welcome to my apartment. I'm Stephanie Stokes, and I'm delighted you're here. Come on in. Hello, I'm Stephanie Stokes. Once upon a time, I was an international photographer, and then for 40 years, I decorated houses primarily here in the New York area. Welcome to my house. I hope you'll enjoy seeing everything. When I came out of college, I worked for Abrams Art Books, which was a dream job because I got to show Mr. Abrams' friends through his great art collection. Then I went to Wall Street because I had to make money, and I was a security analyst. Anything that had to do with women's products, you can make your own list, would be thrown on my desk in secrecy at lunchtime. And after a while, I got tired of the glass ceiling. So I broke an engagement to a man who I would have been very, very rich had I married him. And I moved to Tokyo to become an international photojournalist. Now, what did I know about this? Almost nothing. I had never written an article except on stocks and bonds, and I had had a lot of experience with photography because it had always been a passion. But at any rate, instead of coming right back to New York, I stayed on for 3 years. I came back to New York and went to and worked for 40 major magazines and was sent all over the world by the major travel magazines. Then, one day I decided I had to settle down. So I went to work for Mark Hampton for a bit, and then I became a partner of Harrison Cultra, the late Harrison Cultra. He was easily the most talented decorator that the United States has seen. Just look him up. He died at the age of 43. Then there I was, you know, again, no experience, but anyway, I managed to start a business, and my first client was Hermes. I really started at the top. And I've completed over 150 jobs, primarily in New York City, but also in Aspen, in Paris, outside of Tokyo, up and down the East Coast. And it was a wonderful run being a decorator. So I hope you'll enjoy seeing my house today, because this is the result, the accumulation of many years of looking at antiques, looking at new furniture, planning floor plans and writing and creating my own electrical plans. Anyway, I hope you'll learn something today that will stay with you. When I first saw this apartment, a broker, Edith Tuckerman, called me up and said, you must come see this. You must come see right now. It's a wreck, a total wreck. I said, okay, I like wrecks. She said, it's 470 Park, and I was with a friend who was visiting, and he said, I saw it yesterday. That place is a mess. Don't even think of looking at it. So of course I went right out the door, came down here, took one look, and apparently I bought it in 90 seconds. Now there were cartons of empty liquor bottles all over. The wiring of 300 amps came through one small wire with a piece of tape around it on a folding table in what was then the kitchen. I mean, it would have scared anybody who was not a professional, because it obviously needed new windows, no electricity, a full renovation. And I said yes to the broker, and she went, what? It had been on the market for 2 years. She said, you want to buy it? And I said, yes, I'd like to buy it. And she said, well, do you know the price? I said, I have no idea. What is the price? She told me the price, and I turned to her and said, fine, I'll pay that. My broker's meanwhile going, no, we can bargain here. And anyway, I bought it on the condition that they would have the contracts to me by that afternoon. They mentioned that the woman who owned it lived in California, was probably asleep. And I said to the broker, that's not my problem, that's your problem. with which I got that contract by 3 in the afternoon, and I've never looked back. It's a wonderful space. The building was built by Schwartz and Gross over a period of time, but you can assign the date of 1928, the golden age of pre-war co-ops in New York. It was obviously built originally as a rental, and during an economic downturn, the big apartments, there were 2 to a floor, were turned into 5 to a floor. So I have what was originally the living room, dining room, library of a big apartment. Every room had a little, 3-foot door. The first thing I did was draw how I was going to raise all the doorways and open them up. I have 5-foot entries into my dining room, into my living room, and into my library. In other words, I opened it up as you would a modern building. I've been here 25 years. It's really lasted well. It's really comfortable, and it works. It works for me. It's like a shoe that fits. Welcome to my living room. It is one of the most comfortable living rooms I know of. I designed it to have 4 seating groups. In other words, after dinner, you can come and sit and talk to someone here in the corner by the draped table, over there on the left seat, over there on the sofa that wraps around, or right in the center of the room. I designed it to house all of my bizarre collections. But the first thing I bought was this painting. It's by Adelstein Norman. Adelstein Norman was a Norwegian who went into commerce on the continent, discovered he didn't like it, and went back to Norway and painted fjords for years and years and years. I bought it, frankly, as a decorator, not as an art connoisseur, because it blows a hole in the wall. In other words, it widens the living room by having a big blue hole over there. The painting I'm standing in front of has a wonderful story. My mother bought it in California, and I inherited it. I was told that it was Southern Colorado, but one day a young kid came in here and said, "Do you know what that painting's worth?" I said, "Yes, it's on my insurance." And he showed me a figure that was almost 20 times what I thought it was worth. And then he handed me the dealer. Then, a few weeks later, I walked into the Metropolitan Museum. There was a show on Cinderella, and there was my tree. See how unique that tree is in the painting? So I asked the curator the story, and apparently this Mr. Earl was painting the backgrounds for Walt Disney for years before they had digital film. So this would be used as a backdrop, and then little figures would be moved in front of it to create animated scenes. This painting dates to 1920, and it's actually of the hills of California. It's painted on masonite, but I think it's completely wonderful. It's my favorite painting that I've ever had. The color of this room, again, comes from England. I had a very dear friend named Victoria Weymouth, and I saw a house that she did on Tite Street. This was the color Victoria used, and it's very non-American. It's really a color that is old England. I think it's somewhere between, I call it, when I'm getting corny, Italy kissed by the sunlight. And it took quite a bit of time. It's a matter of, we brought in marble dust that had been ground and put it on with a lathe. So it's the original, real way to apply Venetian plaster. Nowadays, we cheat. We put in pigments from paint companies, and it's very different than it was when I did this apartment. I'm sitting in front of my fireplace, which I found quite luckily in North London. It's Scottish, dates to about 1830. I had to remake it in order to fit a New York mantel. Most fireboxes in New York measure 34, 36 wide, and those that were made for England were much larger. People love to sit around my fire, and I love to sit here and just read a book and have a fire. My house is very eclectic because I have lived in various countries of the world, predominantly in Indonesia in the 1970s. There I had a very close friend named Via Wadaruntu who built Tanjung Sari on the island of Bali. and he would send me presents for years. These are two sculptors from Nias, an island off Java, and I treasure them in a funny way. Now with the cost of English furniture plummeting down to almost nothing, these two sculptures are about the most valuable thing in the room. Anyway, they remind me of the sunny days and of a wonderful life of living in Bali and putting together an art collection. The paintings behind me were made by Rogers Turner, a New Yorker who loved to create still lives with fruits and vegetables. I bought them from Tony Victoria, who's still in business, and I just love them, period. Do you continue decorating when you're a decorator in your apartment and you've lived there for 25 years? The answer is yes, of course you do. I just finished redoing my lobby with my entry hall with the new wallpaper from England, which I'll describe to you later. The chair at my desk over there, the pink horsehair one, I needed a second chair, so I went down to Profiles, Jim Druckmann's shop at 200 Lexington, and got pink. Imagine calling up for fuchsia horsehair, but horsehair holds up better than any material. I'm continually finding new things. The Cambodian vase, I went to Cambodia on my own, on crutches, because I just had to see Angkor Wat. And that is what I took a master's degree in, which is Indian and Indonesian art. And I was told that the best food in the entire place was inside the market. Well, my taxi cab driver was horrified I was going inside the market. But I went in and I ate the greens from the river. And I bought that vase. Turns out that vase is, and I'd have to look up the date, but we're gonna guess it's about 8th century, I'd guess. The hand is pala from North India. The symbols are pieces that I picked up in Ladakh when we went on, can you believe it? I trekked for 40 days in Ladakh. Can you imagine? What a wonderful thing we did. The glass necklaces there I picked up in Syria. You know, the Syrians taught the Venetians how to make glass. The round balls came from Howard Kaplan, a French shop downtown, and I just thought they're fun to play with. And the engraving on the right comes from Benjamin Huntington, who was the architect who drew my library and who's still a dear friend. And the Chinese painting on the left arrived last week from a young girl named Angel, who is an Institute of Fine Arts graduate who is now getting her law degree. I generally remain really friendly with all the people who've worked for me. And they come back and we have tears and kisses and wine. And she brought me that as a gift last week. So yes, things are always changing. This is my new book. It's called The World at Your Table. You see, I had a lot of leg surgery. I stayed home. I gave, in 1 year, 75 dinners. So I was taking pictures with my cell phone. I really didn't take it very seriously. But Charles Myers, the chairman of the board of Rizzoli, called me up and said, Stephanie, I want you to do a book on your travels and your tabletops. And I said, I couldn't possibly do that, but we did it. He sent me over a check and a contract that afternoon and said, sign the contract, cash the check, we're on. I just said, okay, fine. One day I'm walking down Pimlico Road and I go into Cincinnati, and he's out in the backyard where we're having coffee. He's got this tabletop sitting up. I said, you know, I like that. And he said, well, you can have it. I said, well, for how much? And he told me that was okay. Turns out this is out of the markets of India, and he simply left it out in the weather of England. So it had worn down and it looked old. It's not old at all, but I love it. I love the colors in this room. The legs come from a dealer named Jerome Jackalone, who's now in Palm Beach. He was collecting these pedestals, and he still has some in Palm Beach, if you want to call him. Welcome to my office. You see, I used to have a big office with 3,000 square feet and 12 employees, and now I sit here in my living room with my beautiful Regency desk and do all my work from here. I'm surrounded by paintings that come from Robert Moore, an American who lived in England in the 70s and 80s. One day I rushed into Lucy Campbell's store up in Kensington Heights, Church Street, and said, Lucy, what have you got of Roger Moore? I'd bought quite a few for my clients. I mean, 30 or 40 of them. And she said, oh, I've only got a few left, but you better buy them quickly. And I said, well, why, Lucy? And she said, because he's dying. And I said, when? She said, this afternoon. So I said, well, I happen to have some cash with me. We put them on the floor, and I said, okay, I'll take them all. So I took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, framed for a very minor sum now. And I treasure them. We sent the money in a taxi to him. He got it, and he calls up and he says, thank you. I've decided to live now. I am appreciated. So I always look at these paintings and think they have really good karma. That's Cock Abbey. This is Denmark. That's Amabel Lindsay's house up on north of the park. I don't remember what that is. But they're all acrylic sketches for larger paintings he would do on commission for clients who wanted their interiors painted. What do I love about New York? Well, I come from Denver, Colorado. And when I was 12 years old, my family were on their way to Europe. So they invited me to come with them to New York City. What I did was, with my little savings of my allowance, I went around and I bought every postcard I could of anything that I thought was beautiful. And I put them in a book and I handed it to my parents as a thank you gift, saying, thank you for taking me to New York, because now I know where I will live when I grow up. And that was it. I was always going to live in New York. I came back to New York City in the 70s, and my cousin was Edie Sedgwick, so obviously I was around the Warhol scene. It was a fun period in New York. We gave parties and put champagne in bathtubs and invited everybody from the international community and just opened all the apartments. I'd say some of the best friends of my life still are the people I met in that wonderful period of freedom in New York. I have what I almost call a bi-coastal family. My great-grandmother, who you'll see in the other room, went to Denver from DeKalb, Illinois, because her father-in-law had bought the patents on barbed wire. And in order to have the trains go west, you had to have barbed wire on both sides of the train so the bison didn't derail the train. They built a grand house in Colorado, which is now the world headquarters of Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. That's a wonderful story on how the world goes around. And that family produced 3 daughters. They all married very well, rather like the Miller sisters. One married Alfred DuPont, who was the son of the man who put the money in Florida to save the banks. One was Stokes, who was a wealthy real estate developer here in New York City, and a great friend, bizarrely enough, of Tsar Nicholas. We went last night to see the bronzes that Tsar Nicholas had given my grandfather. They're up in the Union Club. And thirdly, the third one married a man who was the largest landholder on the West. So all of these marriages, by the way, were disasters. Welcome to my dining room. It's a very cozy room. It only is 11 or 12 feet square, but people come in here for dinner and they stay till midnight, call me up and say it was the most enjoyable evening they'd had being out. So it's okay by me. It's that it's small. It makes it more intimate. I'm going to start by telling you the things in this very eclectic room. I inherited the mirror. It was based on Robert Adam and Linnell, his maker. And oddly enough, I found the drawings for the original version of this mirror in the archives of the Sir John Soane Museum. It's a neoclassical piece with griffins and neoclassical motifs. The original mirror was quite tall for an English house. My uncle had it made short to go in a New York Greenwich Village house at 88 Grove. But it covered the big mantles that were necessary for American houses, as we have quite harsh weather here, and you would get your main source of heat from the fireplace. Okay, so what we did is Christopher Smallwood, an English architect, copied this motif here, here. This motif is copied here. These pilasters are copied here. And we made the cabinet in London. They have all sorts of secret drawers in them, which I'm crazy about. And we sent it over to New York where I finished it. These are from Bunny Williams. This is from Portugal. And one day I was standing in Aspen having a book signing party, and I looked at my friend's shop and thought, oh my God, it's beautiful. It's from Philip Stark. It's nickel. So you see, it doesn't matter, again, where you buy anything or where it came from. It matters if it flows together. And Philip Stark sits, the tulips in it are from Get the Gusto in Palm Beach, which is my favorite interior design store in America by far. And here's one. We sort of move these tulips around. The good news is they keep blooming. A couple of years ago, I was in Naples signing books, and I was getting my hair done, and I looked up and saw this vase and said, that's perfect, and brought that home. So you see, as a decorator, one's always moving things around. So this is a treasure, actually. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that that is Italian, or do you think it's English? The point is that during this neoclassical period where Sir John Soane and all the boys were going off to Italy and copying the proportions and the drawings of the Roman Empire, mostly, a little Greek, they would come home with capriccios like this from a very famous painter called Panini. So I found this, frankly, in a barn in one of my cousin's houses up in Massachusetts, and I offered to save it. And I took it to, the dealers in New York were fabulously excited. Stephanie, you're very rich. It's a Panini. This is exciting. Well, we took it over to Simon Parks, who's a superb restorer, and took a little alcohol and cleaned. And we discovered I'm not rich. This is a copy made by an English country painter of an Italian painting. But what he's done is he's put clouds in the sky because he can't believe the sky could be blue in England. Secondly, the figures in the, if this were Italian, the figures in the painting would be in bright reds and yellows and all because of the sunlight of Italy. Here they're in English drab. But I love the painting, and it sits here really well. Now, my relatives had used this painting for target practice. So first I restored it, and then I had to put a new slip, this is what that is, on the old frame. So we pieced it back together, and I'm delighted I saved it. Decorators love to make things, at least this decorator does. I particularly like making lighting fixtures. So one day I'm at Maison et Objet in Paris, and I see a girl with a cardboard box filled with these globulars. And I say, well, how did you do it? She said, oh, I just blew them. Okay, I'll buy them all. I think there were 19. I brought them back to New York. And again, we're pre-computer. So what I've done is I had to take them to one person to drill holes in them, a second person to make steel nails to hold the weight of them, a third person to wire them with fishing line. I think I used an 8-pound test line, by the way. One broke in the process. We had them set up at Olympia down on the Bowery, and everybody in the lighting district was coming in to see what that nutty Stephanie was doing. We were able to wire them with LEDs. We've done them back to back so that the light, you always think that you're looking at one bulb, but you're actually looking at 2 sets of bulbs. And because I couldn't go into a slab ceiling, we took the transformer apart into 3 parts, and that canopy was made to cover 3 transformers that are sitting up there. It wasn't easy to build this chandelier, but I want to tell you, it's so much fun to have. And when you look down, if you look down in the mirror, it's basically like having a whole lot of jellyfish over the table. When I created this apartment, I had a mantle in the living room, which was a builder's mantle. It was a mantle in black marble, and then they used a black and gold top mantle. I just frankly took it apart and moved it into here because I know I'd never find a table that was 8 inches deep, but I wanted something that you could put things on that also gave you furniture around the room rather than on one side. The Muramaki piece, which I just love, was a gift of Peter Norton, you know, the Norton virus. And these two came from Les Lampes. I don't think they're in business anymore. Christopher Hyland made this fabric, which had always been my favorite. So one of the first things I bought was this fabric for the curtains. My house is extremely eclectic because I have visited 86 countries around the world and of course picked up things wherever I've been. In effect, I didn't need to buy too many small objects. I just unpacked my things. It would be described technically as a contemporary classic. In other words, the furniture is comfortable and classical, Bridgewater chairs and high-end sofas that are extremely comfortable. If I really wanted to modernize this apartment, I would have to start by changing the art, and I simply don't have the energy for it. I'd rather go traveling this winter than to try to get rid of my current art collection and put in a new one. I always thought that I was a Francophile. I try to go to France as often as possible. But when I come down to it, the bulk of everything in this apartment is English, with the exception of the two gold gilt chairs behind you, which are period directoire. The library is Sohn. He's an English architect, that's a longer story. The dining room table was made in London. The cabinet was made in London. The dining room mirror was copied after Robert Adam and Linnell by the man we were talking about earlier, Isaac Newton Phelps Stokes, for his brother Graham, for a townhouse here in New York. And the mantel comes from Scotland. The hall chairs come from England. And even the wallpaper I installed last week comes from England. So I think I'm what you'd call a Francophile with a softness for English design. Welcome to my Sonian library. It has been published many, many times. And I must say, I didn't really know what I was doing when I did it, but I'm sure glad I did do it. The vocabulary of the architecture is, as you can see, is 3 half circles. And there are no styles in this library. Each bookcase abuts to the next one. There's no room for a mistake. Basically, we did shipbuilding in here. You couldn't have a bit of a problem. We built it in the living room because we built it, again, pre-computer. So we'd rip out one wall, build that wall, and then measure the next wall, build that wall, and then measure the next wall. And it was a labor of love, and I really still absolutely love it. The basic plan of the library was to have pillars of books and then shelves in between to break up the monotony. Because I'm sure you've been in a lot of libraries where it's just books, 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 and you feel like they're all going to fall in on your head. Well, here it's books and then all the sort of things I've picked up over my travels. I think the color of the library is based on the Cluny tapestries, which I was a student in Paris in my youth, and I fell in love with the Cluny and the tapestries, and so I painted my Sonian library the colors of French tapestries. The library works for 3 functions. First of all, it's a guest room. This is a sleep sofa, which unfolds. Secondly, this is a library which is really, I now have 2 people working in here. It's a real working room. Thirdly, it's my bar, and I'm, for instance, entertaining on this Saturday, and we will set up the bar here where there is a dishwasher, a wine cooler, and an ice maker. Oh, I hope that's on. And these these book spines open to a great collection of glasses. I have glasses from all over the place. These are from Turkey. Those are from France. Those are from Bavaria. Those are museum quality. This was a closet where you hung clothes. And there was a little door. And this did not project. You see, this was a wall. When I built this, TVs had big backs on them. So we built this to conform to the back of the TV. Now I have my files behind a flat screen TV. But the idea, again, is a column where you put wines. This is white wines on this side. This is red wines on this side. I've had to look up the name of the lithographs that are behind me because it's a Dutch name, which I'm going to mispronounce. Henri Adriaan van Ried. He's a Dutch living in 1636 until 17 something or other. They're inscribed in Latin, Malay, Arabic, and Grami, which is a South Indian name. They're early botanicals. I bought 13 of them on an impulse one day as I was driving from Sloane Square to Pimlico Road. I saw them in the window at Mark Ransom's, jumped out and said, "Let me see everything you have." And then I did the architectural drawings. While I was sitting there, I happened to have my architectural plans with me. So I was able to put in just the right number to get 2 sconces on either side. But of course, I bought 2 extras that were roses, which you'll see in a minute. These interest me because they're not frilly little flowers or something like that. They're really gutsy botanical drawings showing people pre-photography what bananas look like, what onions look like, what corn looks like. I think they're absolutely wonderful. I'm never tired of them. One day I was in Samarkand in a mosque, and by God, the imams were doing these embroideries. They were so beautiful that I bought a pair. Another day I was in Istanbul with a friend, and we went to the modern Islamic show on the European side of Istanbul, and I bought these 2. They fit in perfectly. The chair that you're sitting on right now is a chair I picked up off the street because I liked it, and I hauled it home, and I happened to have bought an antique ikat when I was in Bukhara, so that went on there. Then I bought these 2 chairs on the outside from Tony Hale's sale. He would be my favorite, one of my 2 favorite American decorators. Now these, I didn't want to put a big table in here for a lot of reasons, so I bought these Egyptian tables, and I took some fabrics that I'd found in Istanbul, and we applicated onto leftover silk velvet. So you can pull these out and put your feet on them, which a lot of people do, or you can, I have a second table, you can make this into a real coffee table. I think one of the main things about a room is to make it poetic, and by poetic I mean of use for many different functions. So as I said, to refresh you, this is a guest room, this is a bar, this is a media room, this is a library, this is a working room, and it's not that big, but it really, really is nice to be in. So, every room, as you know, I keep getting asked, do you change things? Well, yes, your life changes. When I moved my office into my apartment, I need a serious working desk. And so I built this one through MSG, a company out in Long Island City. He had old red leather, not bright red leather, but aged leather. And I knew that I wanted it to fit into my Islamic room. So I did those drawings down there of an Islamic design. And then, frankly, I sat with him one day as we put the bloody nails in. The nice thing about this desk is not only does it fit in this very precise space, but it is the interior side. Oh, good, we got a clean drawer. It is lacquered. Put your hands on this. It feels like a baby's bottom. It's lacquered in the golden color that I love so much. And it functions, these drawers, this one and that one, are for Penaflex files. So this is a desk that looks old and looks like it's been here forever. It's actually recently built, and it is built for Penaflex and the modern world. Okay, right here, most of this is Indian because I spent a lot of time in India. There is a case to roll your scrolls in. That's a Javanese mask. That is a Ganesha from an Indian collector, Kevorkian. That is a Majapahit head, which in other words is 14th century Indonesia from central Java. This is from lunch one day in Patagonia. These are ancestral deer from Bali. I have about 4 of them, and they're in the basement. And behind there are stone, or are Japanese vases that I picked up there. That's a beautiful piece of Chinese porcelain that a Chinese friend of mine brought to me. The vases are all monochromatic. The one in the center is really quite good. It's, oh dear, it's Quinlong, I think. Anyway, it's 16, I'd have to look it up. I think it's 16th century. The two plates on the outside, I bought a picnic one day in Java, and they turn out to be fabulous. They are kanchi. This is from London. Again, impulsive purchase. There's a pair of knockers from Sri Lanka. I had some fantasy that I was going to have a house of my own in the country, and I would have these knockers on the door. That it was a gift from a sheikh in Saudi Arabia when we traveled there with the National Gallery. These are Japanese, again, ritual candlesticks. Another ancestral deer, you know, a tea from, it's eclectic. Look, I didn't buy much for this library. All I did was unpack. What is my favorite room in this house? Well, on a snowy evening, the library is, because it's dark and cozy, but also on a snowy evening, it's very nice to be in the living room and light a fire and have friends come over and gather around it. And I entertain a great deal. I love entertaining. As you know, I have a new book from Rizzoli called The World at Your Table, and it's based on all the tabletops that I've designed. So the dining room is my favorite. But of course, where do I spend most of my time? In my bedroom, because my bedroom has a delicious 4-poster bed, which I built, which you'll see. And it has, I've forgotten, let's say 40 running feet of closets. It's every girl's dream for closets. So I like all my rooms. I think setting a table is decorating in miniature. And for a long time, I had quite a lot of leg surgery thanks to one horse who landed on top of me. I mean, quite a lot would be 27 leg surgeries and 6 knee replacements. So I was home a great deal by myself. And out of necessity, what could I do? I'd say to Carmen, my dear housekeeper, bring me this, bring me that. We'd put it all together, and I'd have somebody for lunch. Bring me this, bring me that. And we'd sit, and I'd take a snap with my iPhone. I didn't take it seriously at all. I didn't go into this as a new business. I simply went into it because I couldn't leave my apartment, and I wanted to entertain friends and make something beautiful. It's the same, I design a lot of jewelry, I used to design a lot of clothes. I think you're a designer, and you just get on with it. Here I am in my just finished new entry, finished 2 days ago. So glad you're the first to see it. The wallpaper comes from Mia Ray, an English designer who I met sitting on the street corners, literally sitting in a window ledge on Pimlico Road last summer. And I took a sample of her wallpaper because I thought it was magnificent. I thought, what a nice hippie. And I got home, found the sample, thought, you know, it really is nice. So I found a way to order it through James' showroom here in New York. And then after it was completely installed, I decided to investigate it. Who was the woman who created this paper, and what is it? Well, it turns out it's based on an Indian piece of furniture from Andhra Pradesh in southern India. And it is, it represents palm trees. It was originally engraved into wood with ivory insets. Yet it's the absolutely perfect scale for this room. It envelops you, and I'm thrilled to have it. So when I investigated this woman, I discovered that she was my best friend. Her family was my best. She's no hippie. She's a titled Englishwoman, and her family is related to Victoria Weymouth, my dear friend in London. The wallpaper is particularly good because one day I was sitting in my living room and I looked. I used to have a New York very grand table by Duncan Fife, and I looked over and I said, I'm sick of this brown wood. I want a blue-green seashell. And my assistant said, you're nuts. I said, I am. So I called up Thomas Messel in London and said, Thomas, can you make me a blue-green seashell? He said, yes. Then we discovered that we couldn't use the ultra suede of England because it doesn't work in New York. So I went down to where I buy fabrics for dresses and sent him the blue-green. The mirror is actually really rare. I think it's 1760. I bought it at auction at Sotheby's. It's gold parcel gilt. Everything has come together. So, as I said, decorators do go on, do change things, do make differences all the time, but there seems to be an innate sense of taste or desire that keeps resurfacing in your choices that you make. The light fixture I bought from a Korean friend of mine, it was made in India as well. The chairs came from auction. They're Regency. I think they're a little late. I think they're 1835 or so. Now, this is my hero. This is James Stokes, who is my great-great-grandfather. This very handsome man created the YMCA. And about 4 years ago, well, right before COVID, I was asked to help restore the building that he gave to the country of France. It's in the 9th arrondissement, in other words, near the Folies Bergère. And when I went through it, I was flabbergasted because you could see the windows were America fenestration. You could see the mantels were made in New York in very modest, discreet taste. You could see that the entire idea, there's a basketball court. It's the first basketball court in Europe. There's an Olympic swimming pool. It's all an American idea, and this man wanted to give the French the opportunity to be of good health by exercising and having a place to stay. It was like a men's retreat. And unfortunately, we got into the middle of restoring it with enormous enthusiasm, and they had an electrical fire. And I have yet to find out what the status is right now. So I keep getting wonderfully nutty ideas. One day I walked in, I said, I have to have a Sonia Delaunay rug. So I pulled out all of her paintings and I studied her exhaustively. Bard had just done a show on her graphic work, and there were some in the Guggenheim. And anyway, I had classic rug, weave this rug to exactly fit in this space. And it's wonderful because she had a feeling, I think it's called sophism, that if you use bright colors and circular shapes, that you could inspire people to be happy. And I think she's right. She's always been one of my heroines. So here we have bright colors, some circular forms, and it works with India. What can I say? It works with an English seashell. It works with a French mantle. It works with my great-great-grandfather from America. It all comes together. It's okay. I think that what gives a house a soul is layering, is a personal apartment. In other words, the objects that I've collected, it's really a novel of a life, this apartment. This apartment is unique. It's not white or beige, which is the fashion in the modern condos, and I understand why that exists. Everything in this apartment has a story to it, and therefore I think is very personal and very makes my friends comfortable. Let's put it that way. This is my bedroom, which I absolutely love. I think every client I've ever had, when she wanted to choose what she wanted for her own bedroom, she chose the colors that suit her skin color and her eyes. So my colors, of course, are blue with blue eyes, and I'm a blonde brown. And it started off with, I was walking up 3rd Avenue past Scalamandre one day, and I saw this Greek print in the window, and I went in and I said to the owner, look, I'll take so many yards of this, so many yards of the blue, so many yards of the, it went on like that. And he said, Stephanie, you're nuts. What's going on here? I said, I'm going to redo my bedroom, and I know the yardage. The white curtain for the curtains have been up there 20 years. And it's wonderful. There's, you can change the bed hangings, which I've had to because of leaks from my neighbors upstairs. But you can still stick with the same basic idea now. Okay, this bed is sublime. It's really a room within a room. Basically, when you're in here, you have a ceiling that a Nigerian and I worked out with our hands. You see, what I did is I took the scalamandri fabric and I had it embroidered by Penn and Fletcher, who is doing some more embroidery for me right now. I had the tree that's behind me. As an art historian, I thought, oh, I'm going to run over and ask the curator, is the tree with this or that? No, there's a tree of life in every civilization. There's a tree of life in England, in France, even in Egypt, everywhere. People have the idea that trees are a source of life. And this one comes from the drawing room that's between the two bathrooms at Villa Carrelos, which is a house built by Renac in Beaulieu, France. In other words, it's right off of Cap Ferrat. When I was a student in Villefranche, we used to go down and jog the island in the afternoon, and we would stop in to Villa Carrelos and take the tour in English and then go back and take it in French so we could learn the terms for the portal, the over-mantel door, and all the things that you would need in interior design. Anyway, I love my bed, and I love the color sense of the blue and the grayish. It was very hard to make this bed. It started off with Lower Broadway. Bernie Carr, who owned Hyde Park Antiques, had these poles lying on the street, chained to a stair, and I went up and bought them from him. But of course, the proportions in England I don't like them. They have little dust skirts like this and little valances like this. I wanted to make this grand for my 10-foot room. So we decapitated them and then took off their bases. And I did the drawings to scale it for the scale I wanted. Joe Buino did most of the fabrication here. I'd seen a bed at Mallett's in London with the same cornice, and we were able to replicate part of it and then to have it gold gilt here in the United States. The cornice pulls off like a drawer if you're going to change the fabrics. This is Timothy Corrigan's sheets that he's just done, and I'm thrilled to have those. He's a designer who lives in France now. The two little chairs that you're sitting on came from a small antique show in London, and I had them covered in Prel silk velvet. The stack of books are all, wishes that I did read instead of stacking them up. And the table comes from Hudson, New York, which is a wonderful place to go for antiques. This is my obscene collection of necklaces. They've come from everywhere. Mary McFadden would give me jades, and I'd go down to 48th Street because I love designing jewelry, and find original jades or original amber. These come from flea markets in Provence. This comes from Bogota. These are from Alex Bitter, who is a really good designer here in New York. The coral comes from Sicily, where they take white coral and dye it and sell it as coral. Anyway, it's just the way of keeping things all sorted out. The tulips are by a man named Rory McCune. Rory was a rock singer who left singing and started making these botanicals. They were a gift to me from my late business partner, Harrison Cultra. He was best friends with Rory. Rory's first cousin was, again, we're back to Victoria Weymouth again, and back to the people who did the wallpaper in my hall. None of this was intentional. I didn't go and ask anybody, have any of your first cousins done anything? It's just that I seem to be drawn to this one great Catholic family. I love them. They are the first, they're after Bessler, they're the only large botanicals made. And there are lots of cheap versions of these on the market now, but these are original, with original hand coloring. Again, my bedroom is very eclectic. These are fish traps from Bali that were sent to me by a friend, a very good American serving table that's right for a bedroom. And this is what everybody likes to see in here. So again, this is on the use every 1/8 of an inch. I think that's 1 1/4 inches, something like that, where I put 5 drawers in to store costume jewelry. Anyway, women love that. The second thing that women love in my world is my shoe closet. Now, every woman is jealous of this, let's face it. There they are, all the winter shoes, filed by color. I'm mostly wearing flats nowadays, so I have brown, navy, black, gold, silver, and pink suede. The good thing about this is that the shelves pull out, and there's plexi on the back, so that nothing falls over the back. It really works. And this cabinet has had many, many lives. Right now, I cleaned it out and put it for pocketbooks. Come in here, you need a small one, a medium, and a large one there. Small, medium, large. And this is my gym under here. And I have had lots of trainers, obviously, with lots of surgery. And there are weights and all sorts of torture devices in that. A home is a spiritual word, and house is a physical world. You know that. So home to me is where you retreat, where you are most comfortable, where you consider you are at home. And though I've traveled and still continue to travel the world a great deal, this apartment is my home.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Susie Maggard. Welcome to my apartment on the Upper East Side. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Susie Maggard. I'm an interior decorator, and we're in my apartment on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Well, I was a terrible student, and I always thought decorating, in the back of my mind, I could always do that. My mom was a decorator, and I grew up with chintz, painted floors. We went to every fabric outlet on the eastern seaboard. We were always in antique shops, flea markets. I guess this bug is hereditary, and I took my first decorating class in college, down at Mount Vernon College in Washington, D.C., and a teacher pulled me aside and said, you know, you should really take this seriously. So I just thought, oh, okay. I was always sending away for brochures for the New York School of Interior Design, and I just was always hoping I'd be able to come home and do an internship. I was able to transfer. I did the pros and cons on a legal pad and had this whole presentation to my parents, and you know, the money and how long it would take me. They just couldn't be happier, and I was a little closer to home. I got so many amazing internships with that first one at Schumacher, and that led to, you know, more and more opportunities. Well, after working for about every decorator in town, I got a call from a past client who I worked with at a firm, and they tracked me down and bought a big place in New York and called me and said, we remember you from 7 years ago, and we want to hire you. So I was a little nervous. I knew It was just now or never. I just remember being in their master bedroom during an installation, and they were drilling into the ceiling, the tester bed, and I just thought, if this goes wrong, this is all on me. But fortunately, it all went perfectly. So, and that was the start. This is the living room, and of course I wanted some beautiful, fabulous rug, but it really had to be dog friendly. This is indoor outdoor from Seisel.com, and I got a kind of 2x4 and had it Angus tested, and he had thrown up on it and gone to the bathroom, and it all came up. So then I was able to splurge. Of course, I couldn't get just a plain area rug, a 9x12. I had to have it cut around the fireplace, which I really think gives a more polished, updated look. We are so lucky. This is a working fireplace. We have fires in here every day in the winter. We get up, throw a log on, have my coffee here, and it's just wonderful. We love staying here during the holidays. We love staying here during the winter. It is so cozy. This is a slipper chair that was in my bedroom growing up. I've taken it to different apartments, and I recovered it. It gave new life. This chair gives me a lot of comfort because it's from growing up. These mirrors are very special. They were in my parents' house in the dining room. They were brown. When we were cleaning out the house, they were the last things on the wall, and I just kept, like, they're a great size. They're pretty. They could be so pretty. Painted, and my sister says, you know, you might have room for this. I already bought this apartment, but I was really envisioning a big mirror over the mantle and 2 paintings, but it was the reverse. And I think my mom must have bought these at a flea market as everything. My sister said, just, you know, you should just take them and you might use them. And I sent them off to Mundi to bring them new life, kind of matching the hues of the apartment. I think they turned out so beautifully. So the color of these walls, I can't believe I settled on a neutral wall. I always thought I'd have rich green walls in here, but I really had to tone things back. My former colleague and now decorating partner, Emily Price, came in and we really did this apartment together. I want everything. I want layers and more layers and stuff, and she really held me back. I thought this apartment would be easy, breezy, not my first rodeo. So we did this together, and I was so overwhelmed. I couldn't even make a decision. I felt like, why am I even in this business? I should change careers. It's just was such a different ball game, and it's really given me appreciation when I'm helping clients. I know how emotional it can be, and one false move can be so much money. And it is, I think it's made me a little more compassionate. Not that I wasn't before, but it's a very, very good lesson. This is White Wisp by Benjamin Moore, but we got it in fine paints of Europe in their high gloss to make it look like lacquer. Like, very cost effective, you know, as much as I wanted the whole process of lacquer, this really was a money saver. So I'm so happy with how it turned out. This is a painting I got from Newell, and it's by Richard Rumi. I picked it for the colors and the size. The scale is perfect, and I was afraid to ask the price, and shockingly, I was able to afford it. And I just, obviously, I love all the colors, the richness, and how it brings, you know, the whole room together. if this sectional could talk. There was a lot of drama with the sofa to get the proportions right. The depth, the pitch, it had to be custom made, and it needed to be big. Thankfully, Emily suggested I do a 9 by 9. I just thought, I don't know, but I trusted her. She is amazing with proportion, and when I would go to the upholsterer with her and it would be wrong, I would go into the bathroom and cry, take one look at it, cry, and she would handle all the details because, as I said, it's just so emotional, and for some reason, it's so hard to trust myself during this process. So this armoire, I'm not afraid of brown furniture at all. I got this from Antique and Artisan Center up in Stamford, and I fell in love with it. I love these Egyptian details. I love the veneer. Also, I had it fitted for, everyone's probably wondering, why isn't the TV over the mantle? But that was never going to happen. So it got fitted for a TV. And this holds, my husband has an extensive tobacco collection and a pipe collection. And so that's another thing Diane, our organizer, helped us with. Okay, so a few years ago I took up needlepoint. I think everyone's very happy I took up needlepoint because it chills me out. Alan, I know, as he says, I love seeing you needlepoint. Well, that's because I'm quiet. But anyway, I had to get this canvas. It just matches everything beautifully. I have the date, which is a little not sure, and my initials, and I just love the damask background. I send it to Mary Jane McCarty to get it finished with this beautiful velvet, and I love the grosgrain flange on here. So this is really special. I can't believe I did it. This was the first project I ever did. I had bought the canvas, gosh, years ago. I just couldn't pick up the stitch, and I'd been dragging this canvas around in boxes, and when I was unpacking here, I thought, oh my gosh, these colors are perfect. So you better believe that I figured out how to needlepoint. I bought some kindergarten needlepoint starter kits on Amazon, and then I was off to the races. This is, I thought, years ago, I thought whenever I have my own apartment and I can really do it, I'm definitely going to have a Dale Goffigan photograph. She takes these amazing interior photographs of historic houses, and I fell in love with this. I first had her green door, which I bought in the wrong size and I thought would go here. But anyway, that's a long story, but I just love how this has dimension. I got a beautiful white gold frame, and I painted the sides because I didn't want them rough. And I thought coming in this way and that way, you can really see, or of course I would notice it. So we picked out a pretty gray, charcoaly gray, which I absolutely love. This mantle, of course, I wanted one from Chesney's. I thought, again, one day I want a mantle from Chesney's. I want the steel surround. That didn't work out, but I found a place in Texas that does these limestone mantles, and that was really in my budget, and I was able to spring for the steel surround and the firebox, which is a little tarnished, but as it should be. This table's from Bunny Williams' home. I used to work in her, Bunny and John's shop, Triage, for many years. I just love this table. It has, she does a lot of her furniture is based on classic designs with a little modern twist. So I think that's kind of what I was going for in this apartment. Traditional, classic, with some modern details. I love this chair. People want to steal this chair. I bought it at Newell years ago. I had borrowed it for a photo shoot in my studio. And I had to scrounge my pennies together to get it. I knew I would bring it to every home. I can change this chair is very comfortable. It's very comfortable for a man. It's easy to pull up. Of course, I love the caning. This had you can you can kind of see the golden hues, but it didn't really go with the scheme, so I just took out a sponge and rubbed a little decorator's white on it. Still not perfect, but perfect for me. I got married for the first time 8 years ago, and I was living in a studio, my bachelorette pad in Midtown, like very close to the D&D. I started looking online, and I saw this apartment online. There were 2 apartments for sale. One looked good. This one didn't look that good, because in the photos it looked like there was a queen-size bed jammed in the corner, and I just thought, I am not buying an apartment where I can't have a bed and 2 side tables and 2 lamps. So we went to look at the other apartment. It was formerly 2 decorators that lived there, and it was done to the nines. And I walked in, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. It was a little too done, and I didn't think it would incorporate all my stuff, because of course I had my own vision, but there was just something about having everything done that was appealing. So Alan said, let's just go up and look at this other apartment, and there was plenty of room for a bed and 2 side tables. So I was like, this is us. It was pre-war. It doesn't have a doorman. The super lives, on the first floor. And of course, I was a wreck for the board interview. I couldn't find the right lipstick. And, and Alan says, they're not going to care about your lipstick. And I said, the board can ding you for anything. It's a real dream to have, to be able to move in and renovate. And, it's our little jewel box. He's a journalist, I'm a decorator. You can imagine the books, but you just can't have everything in a 1 bedroom, so we really had to pare down. We hired a professional organizer, which I think saved our marriage. And, she was kind of saying to me, this is really your space, not Alan's. And I was just like, really? I don't think he realized he was going to be having a pink bedroom this late in life, but he a lot of times he comes in and is like, this apartment is just beautiful. He loves the Murano chandelier. It's pink and green in my bedroom, and he looks up, is like, wow, this is really pretty. So I'm just glad he appreciates, and I think everyone knows I married the right person. This is the command center. This is where it all happens. It looks very nice today. I had to pimp everything out for you guys. The wallpaper, I love. This wallpaper is from Twigs, which is carried by John Roselli in the D&D building, 18th floor. Initially, I was going to do the back of the bookshelves, but then once we got in here and realized there were so many beams and I was going to have things here, it just didn't make sense. So I was like, I bought that wallpaper. What am I going to do? And it's like, throw it on the walls. And it's better than I ever could have imagined. Originally, I thought, this would be a great closet. But when we got in there and measuring there, as I said, there's so many beams in here that it wasn't really going to give you a lot of shelf space or hanging. And then I realized, this would be a great office area. So trying it out, I bought a table from Home Depot and had my Home Depot book cases from my last apartment, and it really worked. This is a watercolor my dad did of our wedding. Alan's standing here, and my dad hasn't handed my hand over yet, and he died 5 years ago. And I was, when I was cleaning out stuff, I saw this notebook, and I'm like, what's this? And he had painted a lot of different scenes from our wedding, so that was really, really special. So this is very special to me. This is a note from Margaret Russell when I was in AD several years ago, and I had a little party for myself at Newell, their beautiful old showroom on 53rd Street, and so this was my invitation to my friends. And the background, I thought people would laugh, especially decorators. What is a COI? Mom, I can't just quit. What? The sofa won't fit in the elevator? So these are all the things all of us decorators say over and over. And then this was just a little watercolor my dad did of Angus and me, and we all put it together. Gave everyone a big laugh. So I spend a lot of time here. I sit here very comfortable. I have Zoom calls in here, which I can either have the door closed or a nice look into the bedroom, but usually the bed is unmade. But it's very comfortable in here, and I get the breeze. My bedroom, yeah, it's pink. I love pink. Everyone knows I love pink, and everyone looks sexy in pink. I hang out there a lot. I feel like the professional organizer, it's like all these rooms can't be yours. He works in the bedroom on this sectional. He works in the living room. It's a darker room. We don't have too much light, but he loves working in here, and I work at my desk, and I do a lot of work on the chair in my bedroom. It has a lot of light in the morning, and who doesn't love staying in their bedroom? So this is my pink bedroom. I started scheming for this room. I just thought, I'm just gonna go to the D&D and pick out every favorite fabric. I came home with a lot of them, and really the only one I liked was this bird and basket from Benison. I was just absolutely in love with it, all my colors, pink and green, and I just love how the upholsterer had the lovebirds, which there are still lovebirds. We're still lovebirds. And I would have loved, I thought, maybe a tester bed, but nothing is symmetrical in this room, and I wanted things to be really airy. So originally I just thought the atrium white walls were going to be okay in here, but then I was just feeling I want more cozy and a little nest, and pink is very hard. As we know, all color is hard, but this wallpaper is vinyl. So not that we have children, but it's holding up very, very well. All right, these bedside tables I think are fabulous. I got them at Ballard. I love the curve, gives it a little bit of elegance, and storage. The lamps are from Pottery Barn, and I had Mundi, of course, do a little gilding to make them look a little more elevated. I remember I was working on a bachelor's apartment, and I was so poor, and it came time to charge them, and I said, look, there are these lamps I'm dying for, can you just order them for me from Pottery Barn? So I've had these lamps for about 25 years, and the Christian Spitzmiller inspired, who we all love we all love his lamps. These lamps are from Pottery Barn. I got them, gosh, about 25 years ago. I was working on a bachelor pad, and it came time to charge them. I was so poor. I think I did a lot, but I just wanted these lamps so badly, and I just said, look, just please just buy these, buy these for me, and we'll call it a day. So, and when it came time to figure out the lampshades in this room, you know, the plain white didn't work, and of course, it had to be the Benison fabric, and I went kind of wild with the custom shades in this apartment. Everything in this apartment has a story, as everyone knows. I love to tell long stories, but this was in my bedroom growing up. I mean, perfect. I had to have it in the apartment. I don't want to say that I designed the room around this lamp, but it had a, you know, it was very important, and I went, thought I was saving money on repurposing the lamp, so I talked myself into a custom shade with a little detailing, and I love the rectangular Blanchfield. Lisa Blanchfield helped me do this, who is one of the many lampshade gurus out there. I love luster wear, and one day a box showed up at my apartment. I opened up, I had my sister's handwriting, and I thought, oh boy, what are these, like some reject clothes? But it was her luster collection. It just makes me so happy, and I wish I could buy oodles and oodles, but again, there's just very limited space. This dresser's from Wayfair. I love brown furniture, as I said, but everything I put here just looks sad, and I thought it would be fun to have a mirrored chest to make it a little more airy and reflective. So this is kind of crazy. My father was an avid watercolorist, and in his free time, and so was my father-in-law's, and when we met, it was kind of creepy that they're the same exact age, they're one day apart, and they're both avid watercolorists. This is one of my father-in-law's. He was in the American Society of Watercolor, and this is a picture of Elephant Mountain out in California, which when we would I would visit, we'd take long drives up to the Marshall store for our oysters, and I always thought, like, this mountain range is beautiful, and they said it's called Elephant Mountain. This is a print that was in my mother's decorator show house in Westchester in 1976, and then it later lived in my sister's bedroom. And after my parents downsizing, it eventually went into the basement, had a cracked frame. It was actually a gilded bamboo frame, which was very 70s, but it broke, and I had to put a fresher frame on it. But when I was snagging it, you know, everyone's like, why do you want that? It's all broken. I said, I'm going to use it. Trust me, I'll use it. And then here we go. This bench I got at a junk shop. It was brown, and I knew it'd be perfect for the end of my bed. I had this in my old apartment, and again, I sent it to good old Mundi to muck it up and make it look old, and covered it with probably one of the most expensive fabrics. My favorite. This fabric has been discontinued from Stark. It's very upsetting, but hopefully some stuff will show up on eBay. It's hard to believe that there were 3 doors coming into this bedroom. There was one smack in the middle of the living room, which came in here. There were some, you know, closets here, and there was also a door here going to the bathroom, and then a door here, which was moved over. We moved this down. More about that in a sec. So when we moved in, I thought, okay, how eventually is this going to work? So I did some blue tape and marked it off just to see how it was going to flow. And then it was then, we thought, do we keep this door? So I've always dreamt of having a beautiful, luscious bed and a TV, just like a hotel. And Emily and I were trying to figure out, are we going to put it on the wall, in the corner? Because there was this door here. We knew we were covering up this center door, but then it's just, how is this going to work? And she says, oh, well, let's move the door down. So unfortunately, we had to tell the contractor, oh, we're moving a door down, but I'm sure they've heard that many times before. Living in a one-bedroom in New York, these are all our clothes. So all our clothes are in here, in the bedsides, and then that mirrored chest of drawers. And I called the organizer one day. I said that, I don't know, something's not working. And she says, well, did you buy any clothes? And I'm like, well, yeah. And she's like, well, as I said, if you want to bring one thing in, one thing has to go out. So I've been really, and at the end of the day, I don't need that many clothes. We utilized this top. This holds, you would not believe how much this holds. It's all our luggage, sweaters, we really had to maximize as much as we could, and I think we really did that. And this painting stopped me in my tracks. It was in a window in Martha's Vineyard, and obviously the colors spoke to me, but she really spoke to me, and she still does. I wish I knew who she was. I wish I knew what she was thinking, but it gives me a lot of joy looking at her. We gutted this bathroom. We basically gutted the whole place, but I wanted an all-white bathroom. I really just wanted it classic, keep within the pre-war, and good for resale, even though I'm not reselling. And it was just, classic white marble. I love my tub. I take a lot of baths, and this is, I really get to relax in here. A lot of bubble baths, and so, yeah. Well, gosh, in the kitchen, we were able to cover up the service door, which got us a pantry 6 inches deep to the ceiling. It's about 3 feet wide. I never knew, I probably should have known this, but I never knew what 6 inches of depth can give you. Like, pretty much paper towels, dog food, the whole work. So that was a gift, yeah. This is the foyer. We stripped the door to have it more of an industrial look. Not that this building is industrial, but I just thought this gave a nice texture and patina to just have the raw steel door. Always wanted a jib door. Here we go, coat closet. And this is a painting, my sister did in her first watercolor class. And every time I came to her house, I'm like, wow, that's just so good. One day she sent me home with it. I framed, and it really has a prominent place here. So I love the colors, and she is very, very good. This is our tiny kitchen that we really, again, maximized every inch. We were very lucky in here that we were able to cover up the service door, which gave us a huge pantry. I don't know what we would do without it, but we have absolutely everything. Dog food, paper towels. I hoard incandescent light bulbs. I'm getting to the end of them, and as we know, they don't produce them anymore. I've been collecting tear-outs for years of kitchens I've liked, and they always had a dark cabinet. And so I just love this color blue, and it went perfectly with this fabric I saw at Schumacher, and it really ties everything in. So this is the kitchen, obviously. It was toward the end of COVID, and everything seemed to be out of stock. Everyone was waiting. So many things were backed up with the ordering, and I went in, I said, I need an 18-inch dishwasher, a 24-inch fridge, and an 18-inch stove, and narrowed it down so that everyone gets caught up with what's your stove, what's your refrigerator. I don't want an open kitchen. I don't want to look at the kitchen. I do want to look at this kitchen, but I didn't want to use up any wall. I needed every wall I could in the living room. This kitchen looks really sexy at night when Alan is shaking his martini. We did mirrored backsplashes. I've always, in Emily's apartment on the Upper East Side, back in the day, had mirrored backsplashes. I just thought it was the sexiest thing that ever walked the planet, and I just, again, one day I'm gonna have mirrored backsplashes. And everyone said they're gonna get dirty, and you're gonna have food on it while we cook, but we also have Maria once a week, so we're very lucky. I wanted white quartz. It does not stain. Bitters actually stains a little, but if you pick it, if you get it up real quick, it doesn't. I thought I wanted veining to look like marble, but I just thought the clean white was better. Really, in every room in this apartment, there is somewhere to sit and there's somewhere to work. This was on the diagonal. Genius Emily, thought just to bring in this counter and make it, this originally was on the diagonal, and Genius Emily thought, just set this back and you have a counter space, a drawer, and I really do sit in here while I'm cooking all my stews, haha. But we really did maximize. A lot of people stop. A lot of people don't bring the cabinets to the ceiling. That is so much stored. Some people want to put little accessories up there. I just want everything covered. I wanted it to look as most like a room as possible. The color of these cabinets, again, it's a Benjamin Moore color. It's called Evening Dove, but we got it in Fine Paints of Europe in their high gloss finish, which I think they really achieved the real lacquer look. So that was such a great, cost-effective to get the high-end look. Another great, I think New Yorkers will understand what I'm saying, is I don't have one, but I have 2 silverware drawers in here. And I also have room for 2 garbage cans under the sink, which is what I've always wanted. Home means to me safety, love, comfort, family, and Angus, of course. I really wanted a place where we can have the people we love and new friends over, and just, it's such a hard, it's hard, life is hard, and just to have people come in and feel safe and loved, and I think that's what life is all about.